Okay, should we get started? Is it? I think Minyan's over, right?
Yeah.
All right, Mendel's here. We can start. Okay, so we were learning yesterday that there's a machlokes of the Amoraim as to what the ramifications of a ketana, a minor, accepting kiddushin independently of her father. She doesn't have a right to do that, and really it's not a valid kiddushin. But Rav and Shmuel are nevertheless of the opinion that she needs to get a get, and she needs to do mi'un. So what is the reason for this? She needs to get a get because maybe unbeknownst to us, her father actually consented for her to receive this kiddushin. So maybe Shitaka is married. And why does she need then to do mi'un? Because we don't want to give the impression that we consider her definitively married without a suffix. Because if that were the case, then what if her husband gives her the get and then presents kiddushin to her sister? If he would present kiddushin to her sister, we would say, well, the sister of a divorcee, there's no tzvisis kiddushin, there's no marriage. So therefore, this act was completely null and void, it was meaningless. But if in reality, the girl that he had originally presented kiddushin to was never married to him, then the sister, if he presents kiddushin to her, is taka married. And we therefore want to do something demonstrative to show that the get that he's giving is not because she's for sure was his wife and he's divorcing her, but only misafek, and that's why she has to do miyun in addition. So that's what Rav and Shmuel had said. Ula disagreed, and Ula said we're not choshesh at all. If a guy presents kiddushin to a ketana, it's completely meaningless. Nothing has to happen. She is still a penuya. Okay? So Masiv Rav Hamnuna. Rav Hamnuna challenges, as we'll see, is challenging Ula's opinion, who says that you don't have to be choshesh for marriage at all.
Where are we?
A bottom line of Mem Dalet Amid Beis. Sorry. So Masiv Rav Hamnuna, Ein Mochra Lekrovim. So the Brisa says as follows: when we're talking about selling a daughter as an Amaha Ivriya, which you're allowed to do when she is a minor, okay? So, or even when she's a Nara, if I'm not mistaken. So you're not allowed to sell her to relatives. Why not? Because she has to be able to marry the person who purchases her. And if the person who purchases her is an erva to her, let's say it's her brother or whatever it is, so then since he can't do what's called yi'ud, which is the marriage that you do to an Amaha Ivriya, so then he can't purchase her. Rabbi Eliezer Amru Mochra Lekrovim. Rabbi Eliezer disagrees and says, no, it's not a vital component of the sale, and therefore you could sell her to a relative. V'shavin shemochra almana lekohen gadol gusha v'chalutza lekohen hedja. But everyone agrees that you could sell a minor girl to, if she's an almana, you could sell her to a kohen gadol, and if she's a grusha, divorcee, you could sell her to a kohen. Even though there's no marriage possible between the man who purchases her and the girl, nevertheless, in other words, even though the marriage is not permitted, but there is tfisas kiddushin, there's a possibility of marriage in a forbidden fashion, and therefore that's sufficient for the sale to be valid. Now, that's the conclusion of the Brisa, but what are we trying to get out of this Brisa? The question is like this: Hay almana heichi dami. How did a girl, a minor, how did she become an almana? How could a girl possibly become an almana and then be permissible for her father then to sell afterwards? It can't be that her father gave her away in marriage and then her husband died, and now the father wants to sell her as an Amaha Ivriya, because we have a general principle that we've learned elsewhere, we've learned it before, that once a girl is married off by her father, even if that marriage terminates, he can no longer sell her as an Amaha Ivriya. So the only way that we can imagine that a girl became an almana and her father can sell her is elalav de kaddish ihi nafsha v'kakari la almana. It must be that she herself accepted kiddushin, and therefore her father still has rights to sell her off. And yet we see that the Brisa calls her an almana. Does that not imply that this is in some substantive way a real marriage, and therefore you have to reckon with it, not like Ula had suggested? So the Gemara says no. Amar of Amram, Amar Rabbi Yitzchak, Kacha b'kiddusha Yud v'aliba de Rabbi Yossi b'Rabbi Yehuda, da Amar Mos harishanos lav l'kiddusha nitnu. So the Gemara says no, you completely misunderstood that Brisa. That Brisa is not at all talking about a case of a girl who accepts Kiddushin as a minor for herself. It's talking about a totally different situation. What happened was, the father originally sold her as an Amma Ha'ivriya, and the first master exercised his option of marrying her, and married her, and then he died. According to Rabbi Yossi b'Rabbi Yehuda, it is the father's privilege to sell her again as an Amma Ha'ivriya to another master. Now, what's the reason? This is a machlokus between the Chachamim and Rabbi Yossi b'Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yossi b'Rabbi Yehuda says that when I sell my daughter into servitude, I am not accepting money for her kiddushin. I am only accepting money for her servitude. The fact that the Torah gives the master the right to marry her, what is the mechanism of marriage? Not the money that he presented to me, the father, but rather his forgiveness of her servitude debt, which has monetary value. And to whom does he present that? He presents it to the girl, not to the father. And therefore, since the father never accepted Kiddushin on behalf of his daughter when he sold her into slavery, and then the husband married her, there was no presentation of Kiddushin to me, the father. The presentation was to my daughter of Kiddushin. And therefore, since her husband died and she comes back into my home, I do have the right to to sell her off again into servitude. That's what the Brisa is referring to, and it's got nothing to do with our situation of a daughter who's a minor accepting Kiddushin for herself. Let us go weiter. Itmar, meis v'nafla lifnei achiv liyibum. Now, what if a girl had accepted Kiddushin as a minor? And remember, we have this machlokes as to whether this is a marriage that needs to be reckoned with or not. As you'll see in a moment, this next piece of Gemara is going according to Rav and Shmuel, who say that you do have to reckon with the marriage to some degree. She accepts Kiddushin, and then her husband dies. So it's a pseudo-marriage, right? So she now falls for pseudo-yibum, right? So Amar Rav Huna Amar Rav, mima'enes lema'amaro ve'ena mima'enes lizikaso. So Rav Huna, in the name of Rav, says like this. In a situation where there was no mimer, where the Yavam did not present her with Kiddushin. If you go back to Maseches Yavamos, you'll recall that the method of Yibum is through Bia. That's the only method of Yibum. However, there's a rabbinic act that the Yavam can do, which is to present her with an object of value, and this, at least rabbinically, precludes her from doing Yibum with any of the other brothers. And we also learned that if the Yavam presents her with a mimer, and then he decides to call it off, he has to do two things. He has to do chalitza with her, plus he has to give her a get. So comes along Rav and says like this: if he doesn't do anything and decides that he just doesn't want to have a marriage with her, so then she just gets chalitza and you're done with it. If, however, he gives her a mimer, then she's going to need three things. She's going to need a get, she's going to need chalitza, and she's going to have to do miyun. Now the Gemara is going to speak it out. The Gemara is going to explain it. So Keitzad, what's the case? Asa b'maimer tzricha getu tzricha chalitza tzricha miyun. If he gives her a mimer, she's going to need all three things. She's going to need a get, she's going to need chalitza, and she's going to need to do miyun. Tzricha get shemen yisrat zahav b'kiddushay sheni. So let's speak it out. Why does she need a get? She needs a get because even if she was never married to the first guy, but she was married, but the second guy presents her with a mimer, so basically it's not really a mimer, it's a presentation of Kiddushin, and maybe her father at this point is happy with the marriage to the second guy, and therefore she needs a bona fide get in order to be divorced from him. Tzricha chalitza shemen yisrat zahav b'kiddushay rishon. She needs to get chalitza because maybe the act that she did with the first guy was assented to by her father, and therefore she's a real Yavama, and therefore she needs taka chalitza. Tzricha miyun shema lo nisratza ha'av lo b'kiddushay rishon v'lo b'kiddushay sheni v'yomro in kiddushin tovsim ba'achosa. If, however, let's say the father never assented to either the marriage to the first guy or to the second guy, in which case she was never married to the first guy. She never fell to yibum to the second guy. The second guy presents her kiddushin, which is totally meaningless. But if everyone's going to see that she's getting a get, people are going to think that there is an actual relationship between the second guy and this Yavama, and they're going to therefore think that after he gives her a get, if he tries to present Kiddushin to her sister, that's totally meaningless, like we said before. And therefore, Midrabanan, the rabbis required her to do miyun, so as to demonstrate that this is really just a pseudo-marriage, not a real marriage and not a real divorce. And therefore, if he tries to do Kiddushin with the sister, that will also require the sister to get a get as well. Now, but lo asa b'maimer eina tzricha ela chalitza bilvad. If, however, the Yavam did not give her a mimer, then the only thing that she would need would be chalitza. That's the only thing that she would need, because at most she's a Yavama, because her father assented to the first marriage. So if that's the case and her husband dies, so then she falls to chalitza, falls to Yibum or chalitza. So that's the only thing that she would need to get from the brother. And Mayamart Tiboy Nomi Miyun Shemayomru in Kiddushin Tovsim Ba'achosa. What are you going to say? Maybe she should have to do Miyun after the chalitza. Why? Because if you only let her do chalitza, what are people going to say? That if the brother were then to present her sister with Kiddushin, maybe people will say that there's no tfisas kiddushin to the sister. That's not going to be what people are going to say, because akol yodim achas chalutzu derabbanan. Everybody knows that midioraisa, it is permitted for a man to marry the sister of the girl that he did chalitza with. So there's no concern that people are going to think that there was no tfisas kiddushin when he presented kiddushin to her sister. The Amar Reish Lakish kanshana Rabbi achos grusha midioraisa achas chalutza midivrei sofrim. As Reish Lakish inferred from a teaching of Rabbi in a Mishnah that the law that a man cannot marry his divorcee's sister is a law de oraisa. She's really like an erva, and therefore if he even tries to present her with kiddushin, there's no tfisas kiddushin. But if a man presents the sister of his chalutza with kiddushin, midioraisa, that's a marriage. And there, it's only midrabanan that it's not a marriage. So therefore, everyone would already know that she needs a get. And therefore, there's no need to do miyun. The whole purpose of doing miyun is in order to demonstrate that there's a possibility of tfisas kiddushin with the sister. But everyone already knows that there's tfisas kiddushin with the sister of a chalutza, and therefore, in a situation where she just did chalitza with this guy, there's no need to do anything else. Now let's talk about some stories. There were these two gentlemen who were drinking wine under either the willows, that's what one explanation of the word sipi means in Bavel, or it could also mean the protruding stones of a wall in Bavel. I guess after you drink a little wine, you start to feel good, right? You start to feel kinship and friendship with each other. So one guy presents the other guy with a cup of wine. And Amr Mikachali Bratech Libri, he says, with this cup of wine that I'm giving you, I hereby want my son to marry your daughter. So Amar Ravina Afilu Lamanda Amar Chayshinan Shema Nisratze Ha'av Shema Nisratze Habein Lo Amrina. He says, even according to those opinions that we learned between Rav and Shmuel, who said that there's always a possibility that when a girl accepts Kiddushin for herself, maybe her father assented to it, but no one's going to, so you have to be choshesh, maybe, right? But no one agrees that in this case you have to worry about Kiddushin. You know why? Because a father has no right to accept Kiddushin for his son. And you don't think, well, maybe the son assented to it. No, that's not something that we're choshesh for. And so therefore there's no kiddushin whatsoever over here.
It's not a cotton, right?
No, the son is not a katan. The father has no jurisdiction to marry off his son, whether he's a katan or a gadol. So Amri le Rabbanon le Ravina v'dilma shliach shavye. So how do you know? Maybe the son had appointed his father as his shaliach. Please, Dad, find me a nice girl. The Gemara says, Lo chatzif inish l'shavuye la'avu ha'shaliach. The answer is that would be considered to be something chutzpahdik, to ask your father to act as your shaliach to find you a bride. That's not respectful to ask your father to take care of this for you. What?
Pay for it is okay. Pay for the wedding.
Pay for the wedding is one thing, but that you have to schlep and find a bride for me, that a son doesn't do to his father. Bedilma artsuye artsuye kameh. But when second, says the Gemara, but maybe the son had said, oh, that girl Rachel, that's the daughter of your friend Yankel, I really, really like her. I'd love to marry her. But he doesn't tell his father, I want making you a shaliach. That's disrespectful. But maybe just the father knows that he's enamored by this girl Rachel, and so he goes to his friend Yankel and he says, my son wants to marry your daughter. Here's Kiddushin on his behalf. And why don't you use the principle of Zachin la'adam shelo b'fanav? If you already know that it's a merit for this fellow, then why don't you say that's what happened? And be choshesh for that. So Amarle Rabba bar Shimi beferish Amar Mar de lo savar lahad Rav Shmuel. The answer is because Ravina bichlal doesn't hold of Rav and Shmuel's concerns that maybe when a girl accepts Kiddushin that you have to worry that her father may have assented to it. In a similar vein, when a father presents Kiddushin on behalf of his son, you don't have to worry that maybe the son assented to it. Unless we know for a fact that another party was a party to this, then we don't have to be choshesh that this person is representing anything other than themselves. Hahu gavra de kaddish bebisha diyarka beshuka. The Gemara now tells us another story. There was a fellow who presented kiddushin to a minor girl in the marketplace, and he gave her a bunch of vegetables, like a bundle of radishes. Right? He presents it to her. He says, "Here's your kiddushin." So Amar Ravina afilu lamanda Amar choshishin shemen hisratza ha'av hani mili derech kavod avol derech bizayon lo. He says, even according to Rav and Shmuel, who say that maybe the father assented and you have to be choshish for real kiddushin, so require her to get a get. Here, there's for sure no concern because it's a degrading method of kiddushin. So in a case where it's degrading, no father is going to assent to this kind of kiddushin. So Amar le Ravacha midifti le Ravina bizayon demai, I bizayon deyarko, I bizayon deshuka. He says, my question to you is, what is the bizayon? What is the degradation over here? Is it the fact that he presented her kiddushin in the marketplace, or that it presented to her with a bunch of radishes? So, nafkamina de kaddish bekasba beshuka o bekisha diarka bevesamai. The ramification being is that what if the fellow would marry her by presenting her with a bunch of radishes, not in the marketplace, but in a nice, Niagara Falls, right? Or alternatively, what if he presents her with a ring, but in the marketplace, right? In other words, which one is the bizayin? Is it the marketplace or is it the vegetables? So Amarlei idi v'idi derech bizayin. So he told him, he says, either one. It's either or. It's not one or the other. Either using vegetables or doing it in the shuk is derech bizayon, so it doesn't matter. Hahuda Amr Likreva, Vihi Amr Likreva, Kafteya da Amr Leiti Havi Likreva. Classic case of a henpecked husband. Okay, this is the story. The story is that a husband and a wife are fighting over who their daughter is going to marry, and this is a minor daughter. Okay, so the wife says, "I want her to marry my cousin," and the husband says, "I want her to marry my cousin," and they get into a big fight. The wife puts pressure on him, and finally he relents. He says, okay, fine, we'll let her marry your cousin. Okay? So, ada'achli v'shasi asa krevi be'igra v'kidsha. They make a big l'chaim party, they make a vort, and at the vort, the cousin of the husband goes upstairs and presents kiddushin to the girl. Okay? So pretty sneaky, huh? Okay, so Amar Rabbi Ksiv Sheris Yisrael Lo Yasu Avlav Lo Yidabru Chazav. So now the question is, do you have to be choshesh that this kiddushin means anything? It wasn't the father accepting kiddushin for her. So would you say perhaps that the father accepted kiddushin, or the father perhaps assented? So Abaye says no. Since the father had given his word to his wife that he was going to let their daughter marry her cousin, he's not going to go back on his word, because the Jewish people do not speak with treachery, right? That's the pasuk, okay? Now Rava Omer Chazaka in Adam Tarech Besudu Mafsida. Rabbi says that's not the reason why you don't have to worry about Kiddushin. The reason you don't have to worry is for a different chazaka, not because Jews don't speak treacherously, but rather because no man is going to make a party for his daughter and then swallow the catering cost. It cost me $5,000 to make this vort. Do you think I'm going to let her go ahead and marry some other guy and have to make a whole new party? Forget it. Right? So that's the reason why we don't worry that perhaps the father assented to the Kiddushin. My beinayu, what difference does it make whether you hold like Abaye or Rava? Ika beinayu delo torach. In the following situation, let's say they didn't make a party, and the husband just agreed to let his wife's cousin marry their daughter. So in that situation, since there was no out-of-pocket expense, according to Abaye, you still wouldn't have to worry if the guy gave her Kiddushin, if the husband's cousin gave her Kiddushin. But according to Rava, you would have to worry, because maybe a guy would be tempted to go back on his word. Okay. Niskacha l'das avia v'holach avia l'medinas hayam v'amda v'nises. Let's go on to the next case. A girl goes ahead and accepts Kiddushin. She's a minor, but with her father's consent. In other words, her father has made it known that he wants his daughter to accept Kiddushin from this particular gentleman. And before they have a chance to go to chuppah, the father goes on a long business trip, and then she goes ahead while the father is away overseas, and she has a chuppah with the guy. She has nisuin with him. So the question is, was the nisuin done with the father's consent or not for it to be a valid nisuin? So Amar Rav ocheles b'truma ad sheyavo avia v'yimche. So Rav says, listen, if the father, we already know the father wanted her to marry this guy, so then we assume that the nisuin is a valid nisuin in his absence, and therefore if the husband is a kohen, she can eat his truma because it's a bona fide nisuin. And the only thing is that if the father comes back from Medina Sayam and he starts screaming, what did you do? You'd made the chuppah without me. So then we would say, okay, he invalidates the nisuin and she can no longer eat truma until she has a real chuppah. But Ravasi Omer Eino Ocheles Shemayavo Avia V'Yimcha V'Nipsei Zara Ocheles B'Truma L'Mafreya. And Ravasi is more machmir. Ravasi says, listen, we don't know what the father wants because he's not here to express his desire. And therefore, in the absence of knowing what the father wants, we have to be machmir and say that even if she had a chuppah with this guy, she can't eat truma until we know what the father wants. So we have to wait for him to come home. Hava uvda b'chashla Rav lahada Rav Asi. Even though Rav held that you can be mekel, but there was once a situation where he knew that since Rav Asi disagrees with me, I'm going to be machmir, and we're not going to let the girl eat truma until the father comes home. Amar of Shmuel bar Rav Yitzchak umo de Rav she'imesa eno yarsha uki mamona becheskas mari. That even though Rav is lenient and he allows the girl to eat truma with the assumption that the father was happy with the nisuin, but nevertheless, if let's say after nisuin, in the father's absence, the girl dies. So who gets the Yerusha? So the halacha is that only after nisuin does a husband get the Yerusha of his wife. But since this is a suffix whether there was nisuin or not, even Rav would agree that the Yerusha stays with the family, with the girl's family, and not to the husband, because mamana mutal b'safek, you have to leave it with the chazaka, whoever is the muchzak, whoever is holding on to the estate, that's who it goes to. Since she's still living, since the estate is still in the possession of her family, so then the family gets to keep the estate. Niskacha ladas v'nisei shelo ladas v'avia kan Rav Huna Omer Eino Ocheles Rav Yirmiyah bar Abba Omer Ocheles. Now let's look at the next case, which is a slightly different. The father assented to her kiddushin, so she received kiddushin with the father's consent. Then she went ahead without consulting with her father and had a chuppah with this guy, but not because the father was out of town. The father's in town. But they decided they didn't want to wait for a big wedding, so they ran down to the rabbi's office, and they just had a chuppah there without the father even knowing about it. So now the question is that a nisuin or not? So Rav Huna says, no, it's not a good nisuin, and she's not allowed to eat truma. But Rav Yirmiyah says, it is a good nisuin, and she can eat truma. Rav Huna Amar Eino Cheles Vafilu L'Rav Domer Cheles Hasamu Delo Esev Delo Isei La'av Aval Hacha Di Isei La'av Hay Di Ishtik Mirsach Rasach. He says, look, it's one thing to assume that the nisuin is valid when the father is out of town. So we assume, okay, fine, he's out of town, but he wants his daughter to be happy. But if the father's in town, and you went ahead behind his back and had nisuin, even if the father is quiet about it, we assume it's because he's doing a burn internally. He's so incensed, he doesn't want to lose his temper. But he's really, really quite unhappy about it. Because what are you doing? I'm right here. Why didn't you wait for me to have the chuppah? And Rav Yirmiyah bar Abba Amar Ocheles Vafilu l'Ravasi Domer Eino Ocheles Hasamu Deshema Yavo Avi Aviyimcha V'Lacha Midashasik Isnuchei Isnachalei. So, and the other opinion of Rav Yirmiyah is, even if you hold that in a case when the father's out of town, she can't eat truma, here she could eat truma. Why? Because if the father's right here and he's not jumping up and down in protest, then obviously he's happy with it. Otherwise, he would have made such a big stink about it. What are you doing getting married without inviting me to the chuppah? Now, niskad shelo ladas avia v'nisei shelo ladas via via kan. Now let's look at the third case. What if she accepts kiddushin without her father's consent, and she goes to chuppah without her father's consent, and her father is in town and he's totally quiet about it? So what's the halacha? So Rav Huna Amar Ocheles, Rav Yirmiyah bar Abba Amar Eina Ocheles. So Rav Huna says, perfectly fine for her to eat her husband's truma. She's totally married. And Rav Yirmiyah bar Abba says, no, not at all. She's not married at all. So Amar Ula Hadar Rav Huna Kechaimetz Lishinai Muchash and Leinayim. So Ula is very upset. He says Rav Huna's psak that she can eat her husband's truma is like vinegar to the teeth and smoke in the eyes. It's painful for me to even entertain such a psak. He says, why? Because hashta umahasam de kiddusha de oraisa amart lo achla hachalo kol shekain. He says, even when we know that the father assents to the kiddushin, so therefore there's kiddushin de oraisa. We still said that if we don't know if the husband consents to, the father consents to the nisuin, she can't eat truma. So surely in a case where the father never assented to the kiddushin in the first place and never assented to the nisuin, how can you say that she can go ahead and eat truma? So near in divrei Talmud, and therefore I must say that the student, which is Rav Yirmiyah bar Abba, makes a lot more sense that she cannot eat truma. So Amar Rava, my time of the Ravuna. So Taka, let's try and understand Ravuna. Why does he say what he says? The father never assented to the kiddushin, he never assented to the nisuin, and yet you're telling me that she can eat it's a good marriage and she can eat the truma. Why? So the answer is, says the Gemara, whole vinasa b'maisa yisoma b'chaye ha'av. And here you have to really look at Rashi to understand what the svara is. Rashi says that the father, because of his passivity, this girl is sort of acting like an orphan while her father is still alive. Meaning what? That no father would ever be so totally passive as to let his daughter go ahead and get married, accept kiddushin, and then go ahead and accept nisuin without saying a word. He's here in town, he's not saying a word. What's the matter with him? Must be something wrong with this guy. How could he just stand by? If he really doesn't want her to marry this fellow, how could he just stand by and not protest at all if she had kiddushin without his consent and she had nisuin without his consent? If the father didn't want it, he would have had to have said something in protest. The fact that he didn't say anything is a sign that he assents both to the kiddushin and to the nisuin. By contrast, if a father already assented to his daughter's kiddushin, there is a svara to say that if she goes ahead and she has nisuin, she goes to the chuppah without his consent, it could be, you could argue that his silence is not an indication that he consents to the chuppah. There, okay, he's a little bit upset, but he's not so upset. So therefore, he's not jumping up and down. But no father is going to stand by and just be totally passive if his daughter goes ahead and does both Kiddushin and Nisuin while he's there in town, if he really was upset. So that's Rav Huna's svara. But at the end of the day, you have a machlokes in this situation where she goes in and a minor takes Kiddushin and Nisuin from a man and the father doesn't say anything. Is she taka married to him completely or not? We'll hold it here for today. Rabbi Chanan ben Akasha Omer Ratzah HaKadosh Baruch Hu L'Zechus es Yisrael L'ficha Chir B'Lam Torah U'Mitzvah Shenemar Adonai Chafetz L'man Zidko Yagdil Torah V'Yadir.
Yadav Yizkadash Meravav
Amen.
Yelamad Yivarach V'Kusei V'Yamit Machkusei V'Chayechom V'Mechom V'Chayed V'Chis Yisrael Adonai V'Zman Kariv V'Imru Amei Yishav V'Torah V'Salam V'Chayah Yizvarach Yishtabach Yishbar Yisramam Yisrael Yisadav Yisrael Yisrael Shmei V'Kedushav
Barichu.
Elam Yinkol V'Nechasa V'Shirasa Tishbachas V'Nechamasa Daminam Yilamad Yimamei Al Yisrael V'Rabanam Ba'Tamidehom Ba'Chol Tamidehom Ba'Tamidehom Ba'Chol Mandaski V'Raisa Tibarasa Hadim V'Chol Sabasar V'Hen Chol Shom Rabba Chile V'Chisti V'Rachim V'Chaim V'Rikim V'Zonei V'Rikim V'Penam V'Kalam V'Shmaya V'Ramei V'Yishma V'Shmaya V'Chol Yisrael V'Ramei Moshe Shalom V'Ramei V'Yoseh Shalom V'Chol Yisrael V'Ramei. Thank you so much. See you back on Thursday morning. See you back.
God bless.